Okay, guys, welcome back. This is the second part of the demo. As you can see here, about 15 minutes have gone by, and now I have 4 running appliances inside of my first cluster. Remember, before I started this demo, you did not have that pool called ESX agents, and you did not have those appliances. So at this point, pretty much I'm ready to go. But what we want to do is we want to take a look at certain attributes and show you some of the things that I've mentioned in the lecture. Now remember, the second part of the lab is quite simple. What you want to do here is you want to select your cluster. You want to go to configure and you want to choose file shares. Now creating the share takes about a minute, not even. So let's take a look. Now here you see different choices. Now I'm using the dark theme. It's a little easier on my eyes. So you can see, for example, you can choose container file volume, vSAN file share. And again, you have this other option called all. So I'm going to go with vSAN file share. I'm going to click on add. And when I click on add, remember, you're going to come up with some kind of share name. So I'm going to call it share 1. Now, if you take a look, when it comes to the protocol, again, I'm going to choose NFS. But here, you can see again that you could choose NFS 3 only, NFS 4.1 only, or both. Now, unlike the book, I'm just going to choose NFS 3. I've mentioned that this is really an object, and the object needs a policy. By default, the object will be a two-way mirror, and that will do the trick just fine. What I want to do next is I want to choose 2 values. Let's start with the size of the share. Remember, with NFS, you're really sharing a folder. And if the disk underneath is huge, you're technically sharing all the space, but we want to put a quota. So we want to make sure that nobody can use more than 5 gigs. Now, we also want to be warned if we're running out of space. So when it comes to share warning threshold, I'm going to choose 4. These are not exactly the same values we use in the book. It doesn't really matter. And you could also use labels. I'm not going to use that. When you take a look, here I get to dictate who can use this. And I want to keep it simple. Not necessarily the most secure environment out there here, but this is education, this is class. So I'm going to say allow access from any IP. And at this point, I'm going to click on finish. Now remember, you can have up to 32 shares. Here I'm only going to have 1. I could show you, of course, more than 1 if you want. So again, we want to wait a few seconds. And if needed, we want to monitor what's going on right here. Notice again in the recent tasks, it's almost ready to go. So there's my first share. And if you take a look, at any given time, you can select the share. You could modify it. So you could modify any of those values. Or again, you could delete it. Now, if I click on edit, I'm not going to change anything. Here you can see that again, you can change any of the values, or for the matter, the protocol that you use. When it comes to delete, I think that is self-explanatory. And if you take a look, we talked about copy path. Now, before I mount the share from a non-cluster member, let's take a look at a couple of things. What I'm going to do here is I'm going to pick randomly one of these hosts. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to take that host and we're going to choose to put them in maintenance mode. Remember, these 4 appliances are running 1 per host. So if you take a look, the appliances will not be migrated. The appliances instead will shut down. I've mentioned that in the lecture. So let's take a look at what happens. First, if we have other VMs, which we do, they need to be moved via DRS. Now, I went with ensure accessibility to speed this up. But if you take a look, one of the appliances is already down. So the appliance shuts down automatically. Again, it does not get migrated. You can see the server goes into maintenance mode. Now, if I take the host out of maintenance mode, then obviously things will change. And again, I expect that appliance to power on automatically. Remember, you don't boot them up, you don't power them on, you don't power them off, you don't touch them. Now let's take a look. Let's wait a few seconds. And again, I expect that appliance to power on automatically. So while I wait, I'm going to right click on the VM and I'm going to choose Edit Settings. I want you to notice what happens. If you take a look, you're going to get a warning. And again, you're not supposed to touch these appliances. Now I'm going to click on Yes. And if you take a look, I just want to show you the specs of these appliances. Notice these appliances, they have 4 vCPUs each in 7.0 Update 1, and they have 8 gigs of RAM. Notice they also have a series of disks. So again, we're not going to change them. Notice by now, that appliance has booted back up. Now, let's take a look at the rest. So here's what I'm going to do. You can see that I have set up this configuration, this feature in my very first cluster. Remember, in the lab, who is going to be your client? Your client is going to be your Windows desktop, the gray desktop. Now, I'm going to do a little bit. I'm going to change this a little bit. So let's take a look at what I'm about to do. Let's see if I remember how to do this. When I was doing the beta class, I was explaining to other people, including other instructors, that if they want to do a quick demo, they could theoretically go to another ESXi host, one from a different cluster, and they could test it from here. So instead of using Windows, which is what you get to do in the lab, I'm going to show you that another ESXi host can theoretically mount the share. Now, this is not what this was devised for, but again, this is just a quick demo. So let's take a look. If I choose copy path, once again, remember, I chose NFS version 3. Now, you can see here that the folder is basically what? Share 1. That's what I called it. So let's take a look. Let's see if I remember how to do this. I am going to type ESXCMG-NAS-L. Remember, this host is in the other cluster. So this is going to be my guinea pig. This is going to be my NFS client. So instead of using Windows, which to me, again, it takes a while, I am going to try to do it with the command line on that host. Now, what I'm going to try to do here is, if you remember, here we can see who the server is. Notice it says FSVM01. Well, that would be a typo. So let's take a look. What I'm doing here is I'm saying I want to add an NFS share. The name of the share, in this case, is going to be NFS1. I'm going to specify who the server is. And then I'm going to say, what is he sharing? Now, let's see if I remember how to do this. I am trying to specify here that the share is called Share1, the folder. And let's take a look. There it is. Guys, it was fun. Enjoy.